short stint in corporate America myself, and also being a serial entrepreneur, it seems that a lot of people have this opinion that to have a spiritually conscious business, you have to be in a spiritually related field, like Reiki or martial arts, or writing and speaking, that sort of stuff. But it seems to me that the principles that need to be followed to have a successful spiritually conscious business in the spiritual business world can also be utilized in corporate America. Is this something that you agree with, and what and how could we do more to make that shift?
Yeah, this was not scripted, and that's exactly the answer I was looking for in this conversation, and that's part of what I wanted to try and bring out. Because when I was trying to define for myself what are we going to talk about today? What is a spiritually conscious business? How is this magazine spiritually conscious? I wasn't quite sure, and so I'm trying to get those thoughts. For me, it really came, along the journey, I came to the point where I realized and accepted that I am a spiritual being, right? And as that, I'm having a human experience as a spiritual being. And that created a framework for me that kind of altered everything, because prior to that, I was trying to be spiritual. I was trying to do things to let other people know I was spiritual. I wanted to, thought I had to be a certain way to be seen and to feel myself as spiritual, whether it be through my meditation practice, through yoga, through my religious practice. That made me spiritual. And then the shift occurred. I said, wait a minute, what if I'm already am spiritual? What if we all are spiritual? What if just as human beings, we're just experiencing everything we experience is a spiritual experience, and it's a learning opportunity in this tableau of life, this game of life, that we choose to come into and experience these lessons in. So I think for me, part of the answer to that is personal self. No matter where I am, within my business now, within the middle of a corporate business, I am in essence a spiritual being. And I have no choice but to live a spiritual life and a spiritual existence no matter where I am. Yeah, I think that there may be another layer to that question as to how do maybe from a corporate perspective, more larger or corporate businesses choose to adopt more of a spiritual mindset. And that's where I'm getting lost in the definition now. What exactly will that mean for companies, for other people even as well, So, I mean, but that was the point that I wanted to throw into the conversation was, I'm a spirit. I'll own everything for myself. But I think I am, and I believe we are all spiritual beings here in the human existence. So that just shifts it a little bit in my mind.
Yeah. I think I can't remember who the quote was from. It might have been Zig Ziglar. Said that the best way to get everything that you want is to help enough people get everything that they need. And I think that kind of concept of servitude, of putting the needs of others in the forefront of what we do as business owners. If we the customer is first, and thinking about what they need and how we can provide a service to improve their life, whether it's through Reiki, or whether it's through a book, or whether it's through a magazine, or whether it's through providing a camera or internet service or water, whatever it is. If we put the needs of our customer, our consumer, in front of our need for revenues, our bottom line, that there always will be that abundance that comes. It's not always going to be the way we want it and as fast as it is. And like you said, there's going to be a lot of hard times and fear and fighting, but I think that's what forces us to reevaluate and to get us back onto a clearer, more defined path and identify when we have veered from our own personal truths. So, when you're thinking about for yourself and in your process to where you are now and where you want to be, and the fears, and embracing those fears, what kind of tools have you used to keep yourself going through those dark times?
Yeah. Well, there's been a few, and a lot of workshops, a lot of books, a lot of self-analysis, a lot of therapy, and a lot of writing. Meditation has certainly been one of them. One of the things that I'm really interested right now is the aspects of mind science. Just the thought, the power of our thoughts, and energy, and just being attentive to how I think and what I think. I've created some quick mantras for myself that help calm me, through the years, based on my own personal desires of what I want. So when things start to go off the rails, and they're usually going off the rails here.
Of course. Yeah.
They're not, everything else is fine, but things aren't fine when the chair is spinning and the body is, heart is palpitating and whatever. And so I just, go to the breath, and and that just reminded me, one of the things about having that, being a spiritual being in a human body right now. A mentor of mine told me that too, a spiritual mentor in the past. He said, my inclination is to want to just leave. I'm always up here. I'm here in the head, and I'm here in fantasy, and I'm here in other realms. I want to be in the spiritual realm. And if I had my choice, I would levitate or leave my body. But the fact of it is, I'm in my body. And he says that's where the best opportunity for growth occurs for you while you're here, is feel the body, be grounded. And you know better than most, and that's what you teach, and we all teach, is like be in the body, come back to the breath, stay grounded, watch the thoughts. So I've learned to be the witness, to disassociate myself and witness my own thoughts, and have a conversation with those thoughts. And it's not so much a conversation as it is acceptance and acknowledgement. Acknowledgement, acceptance, and then gratitude. Thank you very much, And so I've done that through meditative practice. Went through a series of learning through the years of the type of meditation that works for me, through yoga practice, which I need to kickstart again. I've been away from the mat a little bit. So meditation, yoga, mindfulness practice, breathing, being in the breath, and for me, physical activity. Whether it be hiking, walking, hitting a heavy bag, anything to just really get myself into the body and to feel grounded to the earth are important elements for me to really have that spiritual connection.
Yeah.
Well, I was just actually teaching a class recently, and we were talking about transformational vocabulary and how the words that we use, the words that we speak, and the emotional overlay that we put on them have such a huge determining factor on the results that we get. And a lot of times we have these negative emotions that are attached to words. So I know in our fields, sometimes the word business has a very negative feeling if you're spiritual. That they seem to be somewhat opposite things. And when I started to think about this in terms of the topic today, it's I think it's so important for people that are in spiritually based business and in the self-help realm, the healing realm, that we start to come to grips with taking away some of the emotional baggage that we put on things like business. And well, I don't want my life to be planned out. I'm going to let the universe provide for me. And not you need to have a business plan. You need to have goals. You need to look at your books. So sometimes we get too far one way or the other, or the converse would be the person who's so into business but loses track. They lose their soul,
Right.
basically. So as I don't know about you too, but I mean, I know for myself, sometimes I find myself fighting that struggle of trying to maintain that balance. And for you, as someone who uses the word, he uses the spoken words and the written word to help people to have their own natural awakenings. What are some of the things that you see that have held people back, particularly people who are looking to make an impact socially in humanitarian ways to raise spiritual consciousness? What are some of the things that you think that need to be tweaked in terms of how we approach our relationship with our spiritual self and our business world?
Couldn't give me those questions ahead of time, huh? Man, that's a good one. The first thing coming up for me is, how much do I really know what anybody else would have to go through? So I can only relate it to my own self, and then maybe somebody can share similar experiences. And so for me, one of the things that I knew did help me, was not becoming attached to the restrictive thoughts in my own mind. So the first tool that I learned how to use was to not associate with the negative thinking. And so I looked for any tool, any methodology, any books to read, workshops to go to, or anything that can help me understand what's going on up here. And so, the positive self-help book shelves in the bookstore, I mean, that's where I go to relax and hang out and to feel more grounded. So that was the first tool there, just to get the thinking right and understand what to do when the negative thinking comes in, because it will come in. And I can't do that, I'm not right for that, how am I ever going to see to do that? Well, I guess I'm not even going to try. That's normal, that's being human. Those thoughts, I got to think. Well, there I am saying what's human, but other people, but that's the way it was for me. So I got to think, that's the way it is for a lot of other people as well. Besides that, I think mentorship and association with other people of like mind, or other people who have been successful in those things that I aspire to, is another good tool to put myself as part of. I got those from all the good books as well. Associate yourself and hang out with those that are doing what you want to do, or can have done it already. So those are two quick ones off the top of my mind.
And I think you've touched upon a really great and really important one that I see for businesses, especially spiritually oriented businesses that want to be successful, is that you must be grounded in order to be able to have that consistent presence and be able to stay with it through the course of time. The grounding energetically is the manifestation current. We have inspiration and manifestation. So if you want to be able to bring something into a concrete reality, into a physical structure that's going to be lasting over time, you need to bring it here on an everyday basis.
Yeah, and you reminded me of the fourth one now, is for me, which I would recommend highly, is being authentic and being in integrity with oneself, and if you're lucky, something that has a bit of passion. Because that will make building that business and building that endeavor easier, I believe, rather than just saying, well, I'm just going to do this for the money. I hate it, but I want to make $1 million. So
Because
that's not gonna last.
energetically, you've got to put out a higher positive vibration to attract that.
Yeah, and that, there's a bigger conversation there too. The old adage was, follow your bliss, Joseph Campbell, or do what you love, and the money will follow. So there's more to it than just fantasizing about it. And that's where I think your question is rooted in, like, how do I make this a reality? Because I just have a fanciful idea that I love dogs, so I'm going to have a dog business, or a dog grooming business. Well, maybe, it may not work.
Yeah, that's one of the questions I get that I have to deal with a lot is, I have students who come to me and it's like, I really want to be a martial arts school owner. And I look at them and say, no, you don't. And because I can see by the way they train that they don't have, or at that point, they haven't developed the discipline that they need to do this. Because just because you love it doesn't mean that this is what you need to do. Because they think, oh, well, I'll open a school and I can practice all the time. No, you'll open a school and you'll find that you're giving so much of yourself that maybe you don't want to practice all the time, and you'll have to find a new release for yourself. So I think sometimes when people idealize or romanticize the idea of opening this kind of a spiritually oriented business, not understanding that to be in a service-oriented business, it requires you to give so much of yourself, and that you have to have ways to replenish that energy. And I think the community is such an important part, because I know for myself that when I feel myself getting drained, being able to reach out and touch base with other people, and say, just to have somebody say, yeah, I've gone through that too, or this is how I dealt with that, or here's a new perspective to think about. That's really important, and I think the more we can get on the same page, like the same page of the magazine, literally, the better it is. And so, I really appreciate the work that you've done with the magazine, and I think it's doing so much to help to create that solidity in the community of wellness and health and mindfulness oriented, not only business owners but practitioners, which really all of us should be.
In a cooperative way rather than a competitive way.
And one of the things I liked you touched on too was that you don't have to be in a spiritually created business in order to bring that in. And I think it took me a very long time to figure out how I believed in that concept, or how I would fit it in. But I'm really drawn back to stories like Mother Teresa feeding the poor, right? And St. Francis, who is encouraging people to feed the poor. That simple act of feeding, of serving, is a word that you use, right? Yeah, is huge, because even if you're a chef in a restaurant, and you are employed by someone else, and it's very demanding, and you're working maybe 12, 14-hour days around a hot stove, and everyone's yelling at each other. When you're preparing that one dish in your mind, you could be saying a mantra. You could be meditating, you could be doing Reiki with that food. And so that one person who gets it that you'll never see, who's eating that food, suddenly has what you gave them. And you could either be feeding them anger and exhaustion, or you could be feeding them love and feeling that this entire thing is an act of service. And I think that we neglect to think that everyone is always our customer that we meet in our life. We can look at it that way, and we may not always see them directly or engage with them directly, but somehow our energy is flowing to others.
Yeah, I'm reminded of the, I guess it's the Buddhist precept, right? When I talk about when we talk about spirituality and living a spiritual life, let's call it enlightenment. So it's before enlightenment, it's chop wood, carry water, right? And after enlightenment, you chop wood, carry water. So we know that it's about being here, present in the world, and acknowledging that I'm of a spiritual essence, and then living, just letting that live through me, and impacting or sharing and making an impact in any way I can, just like you described, just so beautifully, and it's unseen by anybody, yet it's part of who I am to be able to share that. And I'm at a depth where I think all these thoughts thought energy has this ripple effect, and it goes out into the consciousness, and we start to grow. I mean, I'm hopeful that that's happening. And I would also strongly suggest that if they don't focus themselves on the accounting and bookkeeping and financial elements, to have someone strong on their team who does that for them. Because having a good set of books and understanding the finances is paramount to having a successful business, even if it is a spiritually based business. So I think that's been key for me, is really, I don't really do the accounting and the bookkeeping, but I really need somebody that I can rely on to give me the parameters so we know what we're working with from month to month.
Absolutely. We all need to work as a team. None of us can do it all or have the love or the passion for it all. So we need other people to help us, and that's a good thing.
I think it's Dan Sullivan. He calls it. He owns this company called Strategic Coach, and he talks about it as your unique ability. And everybody has a unique ability. And as an entrepreneur, I know for me, I'm a creative person. I'm really not very good at implementation. I can come up with ideas all day long. Getting them done is the hard part. So having somebody who's an implementer that works for me is really crucial, so that I can come up with the creative side and then have somebody to do the policies and procedures and get things going. And I think sometimes we get caught in that trap that we do have to do it all, or that if we don't love it, that it's not important. Well, it's still important, and it's got to get done.
Absolutely.
So you find the right person, and it's sharing.
Yeah.
You know? You're sharing well.
One of the things that I was so inspired by, Dave, was also when you were talking about meditation and how you have to identify those thoughts, right? And you don't just, fight them or abandon them. You acknowledge them, right? And it reminded me of one of the important aspects of any business, which is having a sense of detachment. Now, Jose, you brought up earlier, one of the things that people fall into the trap of is detaching almost after the inception of the concept of the business, where at that point in time, it's so important for us to be heavily invested and have a plan and start to follow through on that path and that plan. But the end result, we cannot control. And if we wind up being in this position to really focus on whether that customer was satisfied with their Reiki session, or if that class for the individual or the group class, the martial arts class went well, or if someone really loved the article, we would wind up having these resentments. And one of the quotes I love that I find so powerful is one of my husband's friends has said before, is that expectations are premeditated resentments. And so it's not having these expectations. It's, I have this magazine, I'm proud of what I did, these articles are great, and then sending it out and realizing that you won't know who you're impacting in a positive way, and you may hear who you're not impacting in a positive way, but at the end, it's not your journey, right? Because that person who might be, have a Reiki session they left and they were really angry about, maybe it was a moment where something's going to crack wide open for them, but they can't actually see it. And if you're so concerned about that moment, you're doing a disservice to your own karma and their karma, right? And it's learning to just let go, because if we're constantly in that state of panic and anxiety and worry and anger, then we're not being sincere to and authentic to our spiritually conscious business. Yeah. What I guess, can you share?
That was just so well said, and it's a great reminder. Part of the spiritual journey is to be comfortable with my offering and then let it go to the universe. And then to be willing to accept the other person's acceptance or denial or rejection of whatever it is, and have it be fine, because they're on their own journey. So whatever, hey, I wrote a piece that I'm comfortable with. So can I let that go? Or do I need affirming response? And when I get the negative response, am I going to go, oh no, it was so terrible? And believe me, that's part of that.
Yeah,
that
the
human journey.
humanness of us. We could get 1,000 positive responses, and we focus on the one, right? Yeah, and probably the biggest lesson is never to take anything personally, because like you said, it's not about you. It's about where the other person is on their journey, what they need to learn. So you just allow the process.
It's called the Q-tip principle.
Oh, tell us more.
Q-tip, quit taking it personally.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love that. Could be all of our mantras. Because I personally, I struggle with that. very, very much so. And that's something that I'm hoping that by the time I'm 60, maybe I'll crack. And I've had friends in the past that tell me, as you get older and you've had more of those experiences over and over and over again, you start to realize that you care less and less and less about what people are thinking about you. But it is somewhere that I feel like I can relate a lot to people when they're saying, I'm so worried about how this will be observed or talked about. My first book, after it went out, I just wanted to go hide in a closet. My second one, I still wanted to, but maybe less so, right? And there's just, but having to just kind of step back and go, I don't know what journey, people are going to take when reading this, because I've had, even with the second book, the first review I had was amazingly beautiful. The second one I had was atrocious, but you have to take, you get it all. And it's kind of like, in many ways, what Buddhism teaches, which is if you're constantly flowing with those ups and those downs, you're forgetting about walking that middle path, right?
Yeah, well, as someone who's 61 now, it's not about caring less. It's just coming to such a place of comfort within your own self, and that you can rest there. Yeah,
that's beautiful.
Go ahead.
Part of the detachment thread that I just definitely want to share, and another aspect of being present to the spiritual journey, is I learned that lesson of detachment in my golfing life. Actually, through some great golf coaching, and there's a whole spiritual golfing community to which I belong. But that's basically, when golfer stands up, when I stand over the ball and I look down at that ball, all I hear is like, monkey mind going crazy. So there's several ways to address it. And one of the most successful ones is to acknowledge those thoughts. Yeah. Oh, that's an interesting, thank you very much for sharing. And I'm going to just proceed onward, rather than trying to block it out and, tough it out. Yeah. So even in elements of things like golf, the application of detachment is key element to success.
Yeah, I really like the idea of the not being attached to the outcome, because like for you, Dave, and for myself, and I'm sure if we really look back at our own lives, we see how we start out with a plan and we go along that path and we never end up where we thought we were going to be. But it's like the idea when you use affirmations of, if you're using the law of attraction, you're using affirmation, at the end you should say, I create this or something better.
More that I can't even imagine yet.
And that's it, because we can only perceive things based on what we've experienced and what we already know. We don't know what's out there potentially for us. And when we tie ourselves to that outcome and say, if I don't achieve this, then it was a waste. Yeah. But we may do something so much better, so much greater, something that we never imagined if we keep ourselves open to the process. It's the thing with goal setting. They say it's not about achieving the goal, it's about becoming the person that you have to become to achieve. So, when we start to embrace that opens up so many more possibilities.
Oh my gosh, so that totally reminded me. So so you guys probably know from the airports of the 1970s, right? All the Hare Krishnas chanting in the airports, right? The Hare Krishna song. So you go through your life, right? So there's Srila Prabhupada he's deceased now. He was the leader of the Hare Krishna movement. But here he is in India, and he's serving his teacher forever. And I think he was 70 when he came over. His teacher finally said, go to America. And he goes on the ship, like a cargo ship. He has a heart attack along the way, right? So in his mind, he's like happy that he's had this long life. And now he's traveling to another country. Now he's having a heart attack on the ship, and you don't even know if you're going to even survive the travel. He gets here, he doesn't have a dime on him. He doesn't know a soul, right? And then all of a sudden we have this huge movement in this country because of one person who, if he looked at his life, even at the age of 65, thought, this is it. Yeah. And then all of a sudden created this huge movement, and not only this country, but around the world. And it's just funny the way life is, because you're right. Life is never the way we think it is. It's going to follow certain threads sometimes that we feel drawn to, but it's not necessarily going to manifest in that way. And there was recently like a meme I saw on Instagram, which I loved, and it was basically saying if you try to manhandle the universe and tell it exactly what it's going to do for you, it doesn't happen. But if you actually share that love and just allow the love to draw you, then you get everything.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
You're right.
Man plan, God laugh.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Right. And my other brother was one of the Hare Krishnas.
No way,
Yeah, it's 10 years he was a Hare Krishna. So I grew up in that element of searching as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much for contributing to that.
you're welcome.
And for being
Yeah.
here today. This
Very
is
welcome.
beautiful sharing.
And thank you all again for creating Soul Sessions. It's great. Thanks.
Thank you, Dave, once again.
You're welcome.
And thank you for watching today's episode of Soul Sessions. We hope that you continue your journey with us during our next episode. So, well.